Welcome everyone. Thank you for tuning into my video. Today we are just going to be talking about perfect competition and monopolies. So today it will be a very brief overview of those two different market structures. So why don't I share that screen and let us go over those two market structures. So just to make sure we are on the same page, perfect. What is a market? A market is simply a place, a centralized location where people buy and sell things. So there are different types of structures of markets. So let me draw a line, okay? And so you can imagine this line illustrating the various forms of market structures out there. Today, we're going to look at the ends of this line. So at this end, we'll have perfect competition, and on this end, we will have monopolies. So both type of market structures, they're not as common in the actual economy compared to the two other market structures, which we will talk about in the next video. These are polar opposites and very rare in the actual world. So perfect competition, again, type of market structure. So it is a type of market structure where there are a lot of sellers. So there are many sellers, and they all sell what's called many sellers selling a homogeneous product. Homogeneous meaning identical. So each producer, each seller sells us exactly the same thing. So right now I'm just going over like the basic information of this market structure. These are as well as the assumptions of this market. So identical. Yes. Okay, two. Because they sell identical homogeneous goods, there's no really differentiating feature that distinguishes the goods, right? So there's no need to sell a high price, sell a low price. And these firms are what's called price takers. So each firm in this market, whatever that market price is, they're going to take that market price. If they sell it at a higher price, well, no one's going to buy their good, because why pay a higher price when I could go somewhere else and buy it for a cheaper price when it's the same quality? Conversely, if I sell it at a lower price, well, I'm just undercutting my profit. So it doesn't make sense for a firm to raise it or lower the price compared to the market price. With that said, since they are price takers, the demand curve for a perfectly competitive firm, so PC, is perfectly elastic. Okay, perfectly elastic, meaning their demand is horizontal. Okay. And just to briefly recap, on the y-axis we have price, on the x-axis we have quantity. 3. There is assumed to be perfect information. I'm not going to write that down. You know, I'll write it down. Perfect. Information. And this is actually important, because what this says is if there is a cost minimizing way to produce a good and service, that information will be widely available to all the other producers to use. Another assumption of the model is low barriers to enter and exit. Low barriers to enter and exit, meaning the startup costs are really low. So for example, a very popular, perfectly competitive market structure would be, I would say, agricultural. And to really set up my own farm, it wouldn't take huge capital investment compared to, let's say, a telecommunications industry, right? I just need land and some machinery, relatively easy to enter as well as relatively easy to exit. Because if, let's say, I don't make any profit and I want to leave the market, I can easily find a producer or seller who's willing to buy my machinery. So that is what we mean by low barriers to enter and exit. Anything else? Whoa, another key important fact is that there are no profits in the long run. And why is that? Why is that the case? Well, it relates to the above assumption. If there is profit in the short run for this perfectly competitive firm, other firms will enter this market, which is eventually going to, which we'll find out when we draw illustratively, will shift up the supply curve, driving up the prices. And so because these existing firms who were making a profit because of the higher prices, other way around, drive up the supply curve, so demand, supply, and this will lower prices. So demand, supply, profit entails more firms entering the market. So we're going to see a rightward shift of the supply curve with a fixed demand, leading to a lower price level, which will erode the profit for those current existing firms up until profit is equal to zero at the long run. So that's the perfectly competitive firm. The monopoly, well, on the other spectrum, there's only going to be one seller. So a single seller, okay? Single seller, and this firm, they're not price takers. They're the only individual firm company providing a service or good. So they are price setters. They face their own demand curve. They're price setters. Another key assumption, high barriers to entry and to exit as well. Alrighty. And so their demand curve, because they are the sole producer, their demand curve is going to be relatively, it depends, but it's definitely not flat. It's not horizontal. It's downward sloping. And so that's important. Also, because they are the single seller, so we're going to assumption one, there are no close. And that's pretty much it. And monopolies earn a profit. That's the main one of the main distinctions between a perfectly competitive firm. So when you think monopolies, what first comes to mind? Well, maybe like utilities. For example, here in Ontario, we have Hydro One, who's the main producer of electricity. So that's an example of a monopoly. However, the true definition, meaning a single seller for the whole market, is not, we don't really see that in the world because it's usually oligopolistic, meaning there's only 2 to 3 firms or 6 that really, own an entire market. So we'll talk about that in the next class or the next video lecture. So going back to a monopoly, why don't we draw them illustratively? And so this information, whatever I'm drawing, is based on the last unit, which is production costs. So if you are unfamiliar with these curves, I highly suggest you look over the production cost unit and familiarize yourself with average total cost, marginal cost, average variable cost, and average fixed cost, those type of cost curves. So cost curves for a perfectly competitive firm. Okay, cost curves for a perfectly competitive firm. So, nothing crazy over here. Marginal cost, upward sloping, average total cost, U shape. Again, this is short run average total cost. Average total cost. I like to spell it as capital ATC. Okay. And so point A, or A right here, at this output level, at A, this is called the cost minimizing input or output, cost minimizing output. Meaning at this level of production, A, let's call it QA, this is where our average total cost is at a minimum. So we're minimizing our cost on a per unit or average basis. So what are the key assumptions of a perfectly competitive model? Well, they're price takers. So whatever the market price is, that is the price they're gonna service. So to determine that market price, we need a market supply and demand. So if this, let's call this firm A, all right, let's draw another graph. Let's erase that. Okay, I just need some reference here. This is the supply curve. Say this is the demand. Demand curve. Again, do not forget to label your axes. So price and quantity. This would be price, cost, and this would be quantity. Again, the main distinction is that this is the market supply and demand. On the right is the individual cost curves for firm A. So let PM, oops, let's zoom out a bit. Let PM denote the market price. QM denote the equilibrium quantity in this market. So with that said, the market price, I'm going to use, let's use a nice color. Will be PM. Let's translate that all the way to our curve here, or onto the cost curves. And what we find is that line, that horizontal line, that is the price that the firm has to take because they're a price taker. So that price, PM, can also be thought as their marginal revenue. What is marginal revenue? Oops. Marginal revenue is equal to the change in total revenue over change in quantity. So what is our change in total revenue? Well, that's price times quantity, right? Or yeah, that's our price times quantity. What is our price? What's the market price? And so any change in total revenue is simply just the market price. So that is why we say the price, the market price, is equal to marginal revenue, which is also equal to the average. It's also equal to average revenue, and that is also their demand curve, right? Again, the demand is perfectly elastic because firms are price takers. So now, where do firms produce? Firms, very important. Any firms produce where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Okay, important. So they're going to set their production at marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost, which is here where marginal cost intersects marginal revenue, which is conveniently at point A and QA. Cool. So next, what about profit? We can calculate profit using this formula. Equals price minus average total costs times quantity, right? And so what's interesting here is that the price is also, because if you look at QA, what is our average total cost? It's also at A, which is also the market price. So for this firm, for firm A, the PM is equal to average total cost. So two values that are equal, and I'm subtracting one value from the first value. This is going to be 0. 0 times any quantity is equal to 0. This is called economic profits. Again, we have to make a distinction between economic and accounting. Economic profit includes for the implicit cost, so the opportunity cost. Accounting profit is simply your out-of-pocket costs to run your business. Again, that's the previous unit. I think that is chapter 5 in your text, for most courses anyways. So that's cool. That is cool. This firm is no profit, and so it's already at its long run equilibrium state. However, what if this firm is earning profit? So why don't we draw that? So profit that is greater than 0, right? That means it's economic profit. Why don't we draw that? So marginal cost, average total cost. And what is important here is economic profit occurs where the market price, by definition, is greater than the average total cost. Why? Because if we look at our formula, if P is greater than ATC, that means we get a non-zero or positive value. Times by any quantity is a positive value. So the difference between the market price and average total cost has to be greater than 0. So where would I place my market price? Well, it would be above, right? It has to be above ATC. So for example, I would draw the market price here. So that's the market price, right? This is derived from the market supply and demand curve. So if that's the market price, where are firms going to set the profit maximizing quantity? At MR is equal to MC, which is, because this is the MR, which is average revenue, which is equal to demand, they're going to set it right here at QA units. And why is that a profit? Because at QA, the average total cost is right around here. So it's called a PATC. And because that difference between market price and ATC is positive, we are going to get economic profit. Illustratively, that would be this area between those 2 points up until QA. Right? Price minus average total cost times quantity is profit. So that would be this shaded region. So let's not forget to draw the market supply demand curve. Quantity. So I need to use this as a reference point. So demand is supply. Okay. That's PM, and that's, let's say, QM already. So again, one of the assumptions was that perfectly competitive firms have to earn a profit of 0 in the long run. So in this case here, what needs to happen? Well, I mentioned earlier that firms will enter this market because of the profit that this firm A is enjoying. And so the supply curve will shift, but it doesn't shift instantaneously. It doesn't shift to where profit is equal to zero. So firms are going to slowly enter the market, right? So they'll tries out the supply, which results in a new lower equilibrium or market price, right? So it's effectively eroding firm A's profit levels. So firms are going to enter the market, right? They're going to keep entering the market until they see that the profit is equal to zero. And where is that going to occur? Well, that's going to occur where that firm A, and one thing I want to note out is that these firms in the industry, these perfectly competitive firms, have almost identical cost structures. So their average total cost curves will all be at the same minimum point. And so the supply curve will shift by a magnitude or by an amount that will be, well, the market price will be at the minimum average total cost, which is right here. Call that S5, right? And so at S5, this also corresponds to new market price, PM2, which is right here. And so for this firm A, well, clearly they're not going to make any profit anymore because the market price is equal. See, if this is the market price, right? Oops. That is also the marginal revenue curve, which is equal to the average revenue curve, which is the demand curve. Oop, I didn't really draw it properly, so why don't I? Oh, kind of cheated there a bit. So where's MR is equal to MC? Well, it's going to be MR is equal to MC, which is right there, which also is tangent to the average total cost. So right here. So that is, let's say, QB units. And so this firm is not earning a profit in the long run. Profit is equal to zero in the long run. So that is case one, right? That's where profit is equal to zero. There's going to be another case two, where profit is actually less than zero, or it's negative. So why don't we draw that? So that's pretty much it for profit is greater than zero. So case two, profit less than zero. Oh, if you're wondering what pi is, let me just use profit instead. Okay. So marginal cost, average total cost. All right, profit is less than zero. That means the market price has to be lower than the average total cost at the given level of quantity. So let's use this color. Let's call it the market price, which is equal to marginal revenue, average revenue, and demand. So firms are going to set their profit maximizing level of output, where MC is equal to MR, which is here, 0.8. This corresponds to QA, amount of units being produced, and this will be PATC, which implies the cost of production at QA units. So again, our formula for profit, let's write it down, is equal to price minus average total cost times quantity. So let's look at the difference between price and average total cost. Well, average total cost is higher than price, which means that this value here is less than zero. Oh, that's not less, that's greater. Less than zero. So therefore, it's a negative value. So negative value times quantity would be the loss to this firm, which is, let's use yellow. This would be the loss. So this is an economic loss. So this firm can either shut down or it can operate in the short run, then shut down in the long run. Those are two scenarios. And what I'm trying to get at is to determine scenario 1, where it shuts down now, versus scenario 2, shut down later, you need to know the average variable cost curve. Okay, so let us just erase a few of these lines. Okay, all right, I just wanna, oh no, I erased, you know what, okay, whatever. Erase everything. All right, so marginal cost and average variable cost looks very similar to the average total cost. So now, there you go. So again, we need to figure out, does this firm shut down now or shut down later, assuming that the market price is, let's say the market price is here. So this is marginal revenue is equal to average revenue, which is equal to demand. So what's going to happen here? It's called the shutdown criteria. Okay, shut down, like shut it down. So shutdown criteria depends. So I'll go straight into it. If the price is greater than the average variable cost, firms will produce in the long run. If price is less than average variable cost, firms will put her down today. Oh, that's not good. If price is equal to ABC, firms are indifferent. Okay, so indifferent, shut down. So we got 3 conditions here. So what do I mean price greater than ABC, price less than ABC? Well, that's the market price. And so where a firm is going to profit maximize, that's the first step. They're going to maximize where marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue. So this is QA units. So zoom out a bit. And so clearly this firm is earning a loss because the average total cost is higher than the margin of revenue that they receive from producing QA units. So now, again, 2 questions, shut down now or shut down later? Just because you're earning a loss now doesn't mean you should shut down now, because why? Average total cost also reflects our fixed cost. And so in the short run, I still have to bear the fixed cost. For example, if I provide yoga services and I rent out a room for a 1-year lease, then I am obliged to pay rent for 1 year. So even if I'm making losses now, like the first month of my 12-month lease, and I decide to shut down now, that means I have to pay my rent still. So if my services can cover my variable costs, so my labor, and then some of my fixed costs, so my rent, then it would make sense for me to operate in the short run up until my lease is done. Versus if, let's say, my services are not enough to cover my labor, right? So let's say I'm short of my labor costs, then I have to pay fixed costs. Then it's much better if I shut down now, so I don't have to pay my labor costs. I just have to pay my fixed costs. So that really ultimately depends on where the price is in relation to your average variable cost or your labor cost. So in this situation here, the market price, right? What is the average variable cost here? Well, let's go to the ABC curve. It's right here, right? Let's erase that to take. You know what I'm saying? Oh, I can't even erase it. Whatever, you get the idea. And so that's PAVC. So the variable cost actually in the region is right here, right? So my marginal revenue is covering my variable cost, average variable cost, or my labor cost. And I still have a little bit extra money here, right? That's the difference that I can cover some of my fixed cost, right? So what ends up happening here is because I'm able to cover some of my fixed costs, I will continue to operate in the short run up until my lease is expired. And then I'll shut down from there. I'll shut her down. So that is simply what we've illustrated is this first one here. So why don't we, if you would like a separate video on this, hit me up and I'll make another video on shutdown criteria. So why don't we illustrate scenario 2, right? Shut her down, boys. Know what I'm saying? All right. Oh, no, I'll be consistent. Use black. Okay. So what am I trying to get at? Yeah, part 2. If marginal revenue, right, is, or if price is below, let's say right here. Now let's look at it. I'm gonna profit maximize right here, right? QA MR is equal to MC. Well, what is the variable cost for QA? Well, it's right here, right? Again, the vertical distance, which I did not mention, between the ATC and ABC is your average fixed cost. So now let's look here. What's my total revenue? Well, it's going to be this region, right? Price times quantity. What's my total revenue? What's my variable cost? My total variable cost. It's going to be this whole region. So my marginal revenue, oh, hello. My marginal revenue, right, doesn't even cover my average variable cost or my labor cost. Now, on top of that additional cost, I have to pay my average fixed cost. So let me ask you, what's a better situation? I have to pay my variable cost and an average fixed cost if I produce at QA, or I could shut down now and just bear my fixed cost. Well, clearly, if I just bear my fixed cost, that would be a lot less cost compared to variable cost plus fixed cost. So in this scenario, when the market price is below the average variable cost, then I'm going to shut down. Okay, that's scenario 2. Again, if you want me to create another video on this, I will happily do that. Scenario 3 simply says if we are here at the minimum average variable cost, so when marginal cost intersects the minimum, we are just indifferent. It doesn't matter if we shut down now or shut down a month from now, the costs are going to be the same. Okay, that is pretty much it for the shutdown rule. A few things I want to point out for a perfectly competitive model, a market, is efficiency. So if we So I think this is unit 3. I'm not even too sure, but when supply is equal to demand, let's say that's PM, price, quantity, right? So we described what the term allocative, or what is allocative efficiency? Simply that is a state in the economy where total surplus or consumer surplus is being maximized. Well, that occurs without going too much into detail. Occurs at price is equal to marginal cost. If you would like for me to do a video on this, I'll happily do it. And so that occurs right here, point A. This is allocative efficiency. And how does that relate to the perfectly competitive market or firm? Well, because at this equilibrium, because it is assumed that firms earn a profit of 0 in the long run, marginal revenue equals average revenue, which is equal to demand. These firms, right, these perfectly competitive firms right here, let's not call them A, let's call it firm 1. The market price, right, PM, is also the marginal cost of production. So you can think of price, right, any price on the demand curve as the value to consumers. So what we're saying here is that the value of that the consumers receive from the product is equal to the cost of production, so the marginal cost. And when that occurs, we are essentially maximizing total surplus, which by definition is allocative efficiency. And another type of efficiency I want to talk about is called productive efficiency. And productive efficiency, without going too much into detail, occurs where that market price is equal to the average total cost of production, which in our case here, if we look at firm 1, right, the market price is also equal to the average total cost of production. So in a perfectly competitive market structure, we say that there is allocative and productive efficiency, because firms in this model, again to summarize, firms in this market structure, they produce in the long run where the market price is equal to the average total cost, right? And that market equilibrium, so point A on our graph here, the marginal cost of production is going to equal to the value that consumers receive. And so that would be the allocative efficient points. Illustratively, the reason why is because we're maximizing consumer surplus here and we're maximizing producer surplus here. Okay. I will make a separate video on monopolies. I guess it's just, a lot of information to cover. And just to summarize, a perfectly competitive market structure is a type of market, a very simple market. Many firms all selling homogeneous or identical goods. There is no barriers to entry. So it's relatively easy to enter this market. And it's also really easy to exit this market. Also, there's no profit in the long run, because if there's any profit to be made in the short run, other firms will enter, which will drive up supply, which will decrease prices. And because firms are price takers, those lower prices will result in lower profits. Eventually, up until the new market price is equal to the average total cost of production for all those firms in that industry. So when that happens, where price is equal to the average total cost of production, profit is equal to 0. And that's important because of this mechanism where more firms enter the market, driving down price up until it's equal to average total cost. That point is also productive efficiency. Firms are all producing at the lowest average total cost. That's productive efficiency. And so allocative efficiency occurs when the market price, is equal to the marginal cost of production. A few more things. When it comes to shutting down, when you shut it down, boys, it depends on the average variable cost and its relation to the market price or the marginal revenue or the demand curve. If the market price is to the right, so the market price and the profit maximizing output is to the right of the minimum average variable cost, firms will operate in the short run because their marginal revenue covers the labor cost and then it covers some of their fixed costs. So they're going to produce in the short run up until their fixed costs or their lease expires. Conversely, if marginal revenue and the profit maximizing level of output, that point is to the left of the minimum average variable cost, then firms are going to shut down because the marginal revenue doesn't even cover the variable cost and they still have to cover the fixed costs. So it's much better if they just shut down now and bear the fixed cost. Okay, that is pretty much it. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to give me a shout out and send me an email. Cool. Thank you for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful day now. Please stay tuned for my next video on monopolies.